Hello everyone! I was going to review a different movie this week, but when I finally watched it, I found I really didn't have much to say about it. So instead, we're going to talk about yet another low-budget 1960s horror movie, but this one revolutionized the genre and created its own subgenre, George Romero's Night of the Living Dead from 1968. While paying their annual visit to their father's grave, Barbara and her brother Johnny are approached by a strange man who attacks them without a word. When he knocks Johnny down, Barbara takes off, the man in pursuit. She finds shelter in a remote farmhouse that soon becomes the refuge of a cluster of strangers, all hiding out from a growing gaggle of ghouls determined not just to kill them, but to eat them. Night of the Living Dead is a landmark film for several reasons. One, it's the first zombie movie. It never uses the term zombie. These creatures are called assassins, flesh-eating marauders, and most frequently ghouls, but they're zombies. Several older films used that term, including 1932's White Zombie, 1943's I Walked with a Zombie, and 1966's The Plague of the Zombies. But as far as I know, this is the first depiction of the deceased coming back to life, killing and feasting on the living, and only being killed by a blow or bullet to the brain. It spawned its own sequels and spin-offs, an entire franchise, and a remake, and it inspired numerous unrelated films, novels, comic books, TV shows, video games, and so on. All these years later, the zombie subgenre is alive and well. Night of the Living Dead also pushed Hollywood's boundaries with its graphic content. The kind of violence and gore shown on screen was more than what mainstream audiences were used to, prompting many critics to condemn the film. But theatergoers, eager for something different that would really scare their pants off, flocked to see the movie. The times, they were a-changin', and horror filmmakers adjusted to keep up with morphing expectations and appetites. For better or for worse, depending on your sensibilities, subsequent films got darker, more visceral, and more genuinely frightening as the limit of what was deemed acceptable moved further and further. Now, you know me, I am careful about what horror movies I allow myself to watch. I try to avoid certain kinds of content. Plus, I am a squeamish person with a history of getting woozy over blood and guts. So, you might be surprised to learn that I really like this movie. Night of the Living Dead is gory and shocking, and provided you aren't completely desensitized, which I realize many people are, it's still an effective, scary movie. There were moments that kept me up at night the first time I saw it in my early teens, and those moments have continued to bother me ever since. Like my mom, though, I do enjoy being a little scared for an hour and a half. She also enjoys this movie a lot, except for the ending, and I think one of her favorite lines to quote from anything is, "They're coming to get you, Barbara." She loves to try to freak me out by doing that. I do it to her too, but she's much better at it. If it were just a gory, gratuitously violent and explicit movie, I doubt either of us would have much fondness for it. We're not into that kind of thing. But it's more tolerable because it's selectively graphic. It chooses its moments carefully. And besides that, it's a great movie. You've got a small group of characters restricted to one isolated location, and all the action occurs in one night, as the title promises. The story is tense, and for the most part, the actors are very good. The pacing and the editing are tight, with no wasted time. The music is very effective. A lot of it is stock music, but it's very well selected. Right from the beginning, as the car drives up to the cemetery, the music makes you feel antsy before anything's even happened. And certain more harrowing scenes feature different music that was written for the film. The orchestral score is dropped in favor of an ominous electronic throbbing. This low, continuous pulsation is like a sluggish distortion of our own pounding hearts as we watch the zombies gather and eat. It's really creepy. The visuals are interesting, the photography is creative and makes clever use of the farmhouse's smallish interiors, and it was a real farmhouse, not a set. Plus, this is one of the last movies in the 60s filmed in black and white, and I for one love that. I think it looks great, especially if you're watching a restoration. The third significant thing this movie accomplished is that it performed extremely well despite being a low-budget, independent production. Director and co-writer and cinematographer and editor George Romero spent just $114,000, which was crazy cheap even in 1968. But it doesn't look cheap. There are no blatant signs of cut corners, no unfortunate close-ups or poor effects that let the film down. The microscopic budget isn't painfully obvious. It was a speedy production, all done in Pittsburgh, much of it shot in one take with fingers crossed, but it was earnest, dedicated, independent filmmaking at its finest. And as is sometimes the case with productions like this, a lot of people worked both in front of the camera and behind it. Romero steps in as a Washington reporter, while his co-writer, author John A. Russo, plays the zombie who staggers into the house early on and gets bludgeoned. He was also kind enough to let himself be set on fire. Carl Hardman plays argumentative, paranoid Harry Cooper, an irate little man whose wife despises him and whose sick daughter can't be moved. It's Hardman's screen debut, but he was also co-producer, makeup artist, composer of the electronic music effects, and photographer of the stills used at the end. Much of his contributions are uncredited. Playing Harry's wife Helen is Marilyn Eastman, with whom Hardman had a long-term professional and personal relationship. Marilyn Eastman was also a makeup artist on the film, and she plays the zombie who eats a bug off a tree. Meanwhile, Carl Hardman's real-life daughter, Kira Schoen, makes her debut as their daughter Karen, and she does double duty as the corpse upstairs. You've also got George Casana in charge of props and playing the sheriff, Tony Pantanella doing special effects and playing a posse member, Regis Servinsky doing special effects and playing a reporter, and Vincent Servinsky, who I assume is a relation, as production director and another posse member. There are also a few people with the last name Ricci on the cast list. Johnny, Barbara's brother, is played by Russell Streiner, who was also a co-producer, making his screen debut just like Carl Hardman. Streiner drives his own mother's car in the opening sequence, and when it got damaged in an accident between shoots, Romero added the bit where it crashes into a tree. Streiner's then-wife Judith Ridley makes her debut as Judy, one of just 2 acting credits for her. There's also a Josephine Streiner who plays a zombie, and a Jacqueline Streiner who was a stunt coordinator and a script coordinator, and Russell's brother Gary was both sound engineer and a posse member. He almost got burned to death when a stunt went wrong, but S. William Heinzman, in full costume and makeup, jumped on him. Heinzman, who plays the first zombie we see, accumulated more acting credits than most of these people put together, but he was also the assistant camera operator. Of course. Heinzman's gaunt, wild-eyed zombie is arguably the most memorable. At first glance, he just seems to be a tall, skinny guy stumbling through the graveyard, but on closer inspection, you can tell something's not right there. I find him very creepy. He also reminds me of Statler and Waldorf, the old men in the balcony on the Muppets, but that doesn't diminish the effect. Fittingly, Heinzman based his gait on Boris Karloff's performance in 1936's The Walking Dead, in which an executed con comes back to life. But the oft-repeated claim that these zombies are slow, awkward, and easily defeated due to a lack of skills is not exactly accurate. He's not going to win any marathons, but this zombie does have a staggering run. He catches up to Barbara quickly, he grapples with Johnny and knocks him down, he yanks on the car door handle and then picks up a rock to smash the window. Later on, zombies use rocks to smash the truck's headlights and pick up a chair leg to hammer on the door. There's thinking and strategizing there, and they do retain some motor skills. As for how this whole thing started, the film gives us precious little information, and some of that you have to strain to hear. As to why, there is speculation about an experimental satellite to Venus that's coming back with too much radiation, but the experts refuse to provide any clear-cut answers, and that theory is never confirmed. I enjoy the scene where the experts trip over themselves to deny any concrete facts, but I also appreciate that the explanation remains shrouded in mystery. It might have been even better if they didn't mention the satellite at all, keeping 100% of the focus on the group in the house. They don't know how the whole thing started, and they don't really care. They just want to stay alive. Like I said, most of the performances are very good, very natural. Dwayne Jones and Judith O'Dea star. Jones was a stage actor, English teacher, and theater director who took the role while getting his master's. It was his first film and one of only 6 he acted in, yet he gives a standout performance and made film history as the first black star of a horror movie. The screenplay was altered to fit Jones's personality, but contrary to speculation, the character was never written to be any particular race. However, there are strong racial undertones in the tension between the two leads and in the hostility and mistrust between Ben and Harry, born no doubt of racial prejudice. Barbara also turned out differently than planned. She was supposed to be a tougher character, a final girl type, but Judith O'Dea interpreted her as a victim of trauma, her behavior wavering between childlike and catatonic, and it worked so well that they went with it. As Ben quickly learns, Barbara's helplessness makes her a potential liability. He has to be careful with her, but her inability to grasp what's happened to her and Johnny can be exasperating. In one painful moment, he strikes her to quell her hysteria in self-defense and in frustration, but afterward he's very gentle, gingerly opening her jacket to help her cool down, finding shoes for her bare feet, and when the others show up, he tries to maintain control and keep them from dragging her into what he feels would be a more dangerous situation. I watched this movie on April 20th, which incidentally was Judith O'Dea's 78th birthday. I highly doubt that she'll see this video, but if she does, happy birthday, Judith! She has had an interesting career. She was in this and one other movie, quit acting to raise a family, started an oral communications firm, and then started making sporadic appearances in low-budget horror movies in the mid-2000s. None of these roles have been very big, and most of the movies have terrible ratings, but she's out there doing stuff, and I bet she's having fun with it. Now we're in the home stretch with this video, but I have a couple more things I want to talk about, and to do that, I have to delve into spoilers. If you want to skip this part, jump ahead to this time. Okay, there are 3 parts in Night of the Living Dead that have always freaked me out, and I still consider them the scariest parts of the movie. Number 1, the bloody skull at the top of the stairs. I have always been haunted by questions about what happened to that poor woman. Presumably, she lived in the house, and the blood is still wet and dripping, so she couldn't have been killed that long ago. How long was it? Which zombie got her? Was she completely unaware, or was there a fight? There are a few signs of a struggle downstairs, so I can imagine that she was attacked unexpectedly and ran upstairs to get away, and that's where whichever one got her. But for some reason it didn't stick around to do more damage than just eating her face off. I also wonder, how come she doesn't come back to life? Note, these are rhetorical questions. I'm not expecting answers. Number 2, the gruesome feast. One of the film's most shocking moments is when the truck the younger couple are in explodes and it's surrounded by zombies who come to feed. It's unnerving how orderly they are, stepping up one at a time to take their portion, and as the music throbs, we see them devouring entrails, organs, limbs. I particularly remember the intestines and the hand. It's gross. You know I hate colorization, but I will say this. Our DVD copy includes a colorized version in addition to the black and white version, and we gave the colorization a gander once, and I found myself even more disgusted by this scene in color, mainly because the slippery entrails had the appropriate pink shine. Number 3, I bet you saw this coming, The Murder in the Basement. This is a violent movie that pushes boundaries on multiple levels. There are some hard punches thrown, shocking for the time headshots, and savage beatings as the living try to figure out how to kill the dead. But there is no more startling scene than the one in the basement. As things upstairs are going to pieces, the mother hurries downstairs to find her sick little girl has gotten up and chomped off Dad's arm. In tearful horror and disbelief, the mother pleads with her baby, but the girl, who is now a ghoul, approaches, grabs the sharpest trowel you've ever seen off the wall, and slowly and gruesomely stabs her mother to death. So much is wrong and disturbing here. The unnatural horror of matricide, the twisted juxtaposition of an innocent child and Mary Jane's committing such a vicious act, the prolonged and painful death, the distorted screams we hear, and the fact that the girl stabs her over and over and over and over at least a dozen times. And then she doesn't even stay to eat her, which makes it seem less like a reanimated corpse being driven by compulsion and more like an act of malice. It's an unforgettable scene. It's just awful. And then the movie throws you one last shock with one of the hardest hitting endings in cinema history, a conclusion that makes you yell, "No! You've got to be kidding me!" Ben, our hero, the smartest guy in the bunch and the only one to make it through the night, goes to look out the window the next morning as the rescue party approaches. From a distance, they mistake him for a zombie, and they shoot him in the head. What? My rational side says it's a good ending because it's a powerful, ironic twist. My emotional side just wants to scream. It's an awful ending. I hate it. Take it back. Somebody, I can't remember if it was Dwayne Jones or if it was a distributor, wanted to change the ending and make it more positive and uplifting, but they said, nope. We're leaving it as is. And, you know, it is memorable, and it does make you think, it does make you talk amongst yourselves after the movie's over, but, man, it is rough. This movie was a smash hit, and along with its sequels, it guaranteed Romero a place in the Horror Movie Hall of Fame. But, because they failed to attach a copyright notice before they sent it to the distributors, Romero got hardly any of the $30 million profit it made at the box office, and the film fell into public domain. Years later, it was finally copyrighted, and it has since been restored. The Criterion Channel is currently streaming the 2016 restoration. That's what I watched, and it's great. It looks and sounds very clean, and it's a big improvement over the old copies. On this most recent viewing, I found the movie even better than I remembered. That could be because I watch movies a little differently now than I used to, so I was better able to appreciate how well it was made in spite of everything. But I don't just respect it on a technical level. I like it because I enjoy the tension and the thrills. It's a timeless, well-made, entertaining movie, scary and engrossing, with notes of unexpected complexity. I wouldn't watch it too much because it might lose its edge, and I don't want to reach the point where certain scenes and images don't give me the willies anymore, but I am sure this is not the last time I'll watch it, and now that I've learned something about the production, I'll enjoy it even more. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to share your thoughts on this movie if you've seen it in the comments below. I only request that you be careful with spoilers out of respect for those who have not seen it yet. I look forward to hearing what you all have to say, and I'll be back next week to talk about what else I saw in April. Thanks for watching.